We're here today at Connor Prairie in Fishers, Indiana. It's a premier living historic site, and we've got a wonderful recipe for you. Thanks for joining us today on 18th Century Cooking. I'm here today with Miss Barker, and we're going to talk about rye and Indian bread. So, explain to me a little bit about what we're cooking here today.
We call it rye and Indian bread because it's made of part rye flour and Indian meal, or sometimes we call it cornmeal. And you can use just those two grains to make the flour, or you can use wheat flour. We've actually put some wheat flour into it because it's a good way to stretch your wheat if you don't have a whole lot. See, here in Indiana we have a lot of corn, so and we grow rye very easily too, and wheat is more of a second crop. So we have a much more abundance of corn. So this is a bread that's good for stretching, since we eat bread 3 times a day. But it's very similar to a cornbread, but more of a mix between a cornbread and an Indian pudding.
Tell me the difficulties that we're going to have with corn and making bread. Why can't we just make bread with corn?
Well, you could, but it would be quite dense and a little bit crumbly. So a lot of folks, especially with making rye and Indian bread, they'll say to scald the meal, right, which add boiling water. But I find that makes a very pasty bread, very dense. If you like that, then that's what you should do. But we're just gonna put plain water into it, and then we're also putting the wheat flour in there to give it a little bit more chew. It'll bind together a little bit more. It'll be a little bit sturdier. Well, let's get started. What do we need to make this? Well, first you need to start off with some sponge. Now this is just a regular old sponge. It's got lively yeast into it. We've broken down one of our yeast cakes, which we've made recently. But it's basically just about a cup of lively yeast. And then we're gonna add to that about a half a teacup of molasses. Right. You can add more or less to your taste. It makes it quite dark if you add a lot of it, but if you like it sweeter, then you just do what you please. And I'm gonna add maybe 3/4 cup of water. Right. And then what we have in our bowl is 1 cup of Indian meal, 1 cup of rye flour, 2 cups of wheat flour, and 2 teaspoons of salt. If you want to put that in here, I'll stir while you pour. And once it comes to a ball, you're gonna have to start kneading it. And kneading it is important. Really resist the urge to add water until you really get your hands into it. So I think it's really important to get at least one hand into it, because the spoon's not going to do you any good from this point. And I come from a potter's family, so I like to knead in a bowl. So you're going to want to knead this for about 10 minutes or so until it becomes nice and strong, and it's not sticking to your hands too much. Now, don't ever look for it to never stick to your hands. Because of that molasses, it's going to stick. Oh yeah. So tell me a little bit about the leaven that you've used in this. You just had a sponge, but what was this sponge made out of? Well, you can get it from lively emptyings, which is like whenever you go to your brewer, you ask for some beer barm, and that barm is what you can use to start your bread, and you can start a lively yeast that you can keep at your house as long as you keep feeding it. Right. So basically that was, you just get a little maybe teacup full of barm and feed it some flour and some water, equal parts, and then you stir it up, and then that's that. I would let it sit for a bit, and then that'll make your bread. And if you wanted to preserve that, you could make your yeast cakes. And so to that mixture that I just told you, you should add some cornmeal until it becomes a very stiff batter like biscuits. Cut them into biscuit shapes, and then you just lay them out to dry. Right, and that's what you've used here to make this. Yes, indeed. So to reconstitute this, you just crumble this up and add some warm water to it. 2 of these will make a nice loaf of bread. And it'll get active and alive again after a few hours or half a day. And in the summertime, it's a lot faster to make bread than it is in the winter. How's our ball doing? It is good and strong now. It's very, very stiff. It's still sticky to the touch. So when it gets to that point, when you've kneaded it about 8 or 10 minutes or so, you want to put it into a ball shape, and you see it's very dense. Yeah, that's tough. But that is going to keep you going throughout the day. Okay. So we've got a bowl here. I'm going to line it with a towel. Okay. And then just sprinkle a generous amount of flour, whatever flour you please, really. And then you want to put the good side down.
Okay.
So
that will be the top of the loaf when we're done.
yes.
Okay.
And then we're just gonna let it rest until it's never gonna get double in size. When it does get that size, it's gonna be too deflated. So just let it get 50% larger. Well, we've got one that we made earlier. And as you see, it's not very tall.
Right.
But it's going to be, that's going to give it just enough chew and rise. It's not going to be as dense as a cornbread.
So these were the same size?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So it has grown a little bit. It's kind of flattened out, and we've got, you can see that it's
holes.
grown some. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's light to the touch. It's not near as dense as this. It's gotten some air into it.
That looks great.
Earlier, I prepared the oven with some hot coals from the hearth. We cheated a little, but every cook knows that you don't ever let your fire go out. So I had some little sticks and then some larger sticks, and we put them in there. And with a little bit of some wood shavings, we got the fire going. It was a small fire. We let that burn down a little bit, and then we pushed it to the middle, and then made another small fire. Then let that burn down, and then we put the hot coals, we distributed them around the bottom to let the bricks really soak up that heat, and then I pushed them to the back and put my door on to really keep the heat in. Now we're just gonna wait until the coals die down completely, and I'll rake them out.
So exactly how long does it take to get this oven up to temperature?
Depends on how long you want to use it. Since we're only baking a couple loaves of bread, it's only about 2 hours. If you wanted to use it all day long, I would suggest maybe at least 3 hours.
So tell me about the oven in the setting that we have here with your house.
Well, this is the Zimmerman's bake oven, and they asked Dr. Campbell if they could put it on their property, and this is the inn, so if you're needing a place to stay, they've got a really nice facility, but it's managed by Dr. Campbell, and this is a wonderful tool now that Mrs. Zimmerman has to use. And we, actually my family being potters, we provided the clay. It's mostly made out of clay, sand, and straw in different ratios. And so it's about 11 inches thick and 30 inches in diameter inside.
On the inside, right.
Yeah, so it can fit 6 loaves of bread very comfortably, and it can keep heat for 6 hours plus. So once the oven has been swabbed out, we're going to cast on some cornmeal to see how hot the oven is. If the oven is too hot, the cornmeal will burn immediately. And if that's the case, just let it cool down some. But if it just toasts, then it's ready to use.
So the loaf is done. The bread smells amazing. I can't wait to try this. I'll let you cut into it.
Yes, indeed.
That's wonderful. It's got a great texture to it. What comes out for you the most for you, flavor-wise?
Definitely the cornmeal. And I would say I would put molasses on it instead of butter. More in it, or more on it, or both. That's how I take my bread.
Well, I really want to thank Miss Barker for showing us this wonderful rye and Indian bread. It's a great recipe and not very difficult to do.
Not indeed.
And I really want to encourage everyone who is in this area to come and check out Conner Prairie. It is an amazing site. It really is something that if you're anywhere close, you really should try to come and visit it. There's so many things here. I really want to thank you for coming along with us as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th and early 19th century. I want to give a special thanks to all the folks at Conner Prairie, and make sure to check out their website. If you're new to our channel, I want to welcome you. You can subscribe by clicking the button right up here. Also check out our related videos. Thanks so much for watching.